Hello, in today's episode we are going to discuss active and passive mindfulness. Okay, now why is this important? Well, when we are working with mindfulness very often, the only place that we work it from is the passive view. So when most of us begin meditation, let's say if you're working with Franz Barden's initiation to Hermetics, he has the step one, watching the thoughts, the mental training. There's watching the thoughts, there's one-pointed focus, there's vacancy of mind. This watching of the thoughts is a very common thread in meditation introductions from many different systems. Okay, now when we are exploring this, we do it very often only from the passive perspective. And it's very important that we also take this into the active perspective. So on the website, there is a consolidated page of the entire walkthrough series that I did for the initiation textbook. So you can look through that, and the first step is a lot of talk about these three processes of working the mental body and working the mental concentration. Now, passive mindfulness is when we have a thought or a feeling that we observe and we essentially disconnect the identity from latching on to that thought or latching on to that feeling, that emotion. And as we learn to disconnect the identity, this allows us to break free from deeper and deeper layers of ourselves. This gives us a type of autonomy, right? And this autonomy becomes very important. Now, the risk we run into here is when we are being not so sincere with how much stuff is actually affecting us. Because very commonly, we might apply this mindfulness and intellectualize our way out of acknowledging the impact of the environment upon ourselves. Just because we can perceive something, just because we might know why we might be feeling a certain way and go through the rabbit hole of why in our past, etc., just because we understand something doesn't mean it's not affecting us. And so this makes it very, very important for us to have the full scope of mindfulness available. Okay, now one of the symptoms of only working this passive approach is that people can start to become weaker, right? Physically, the vitality of the body starts to subside. The vitality of the mind can begin to subside, and the vitality of the astral body as well begins to subside. So because the vitality at all layers starts to subside, there is this demonization of identity. And this goes both ways. The demonization of identification will facilitate the subsiding of the vitality at the mental, astral, and physical layers. It is the identity, when the energy runs through that facilitates the organization, right? And it facilitates the good health of mind, good health of the emotions, good health of the body. This is all identity stuff. Now, what spectrum of identity makes a big difference, and the quality of the identity makes a big difference. So the quality of mind, the quality of view, the quality of your ability to work through and understand the four bases of supernatural power, the aspects of the will, of discernment, of cohesion and attachment, and consciousness in general. This stuff plays a big role. The quality of the mind that is being energized. So the mental identity and the quality of that mind. The quality of the astral body that is being energized. This makes a really big difference. The quality of the astral identity. the quality of the physical body, the physical identity that's being energized, and the place that it's being energized from. These are all very, very important, because if we are developing a mindfulness that allows us to connect to far deeper relationships with surrender and the energy that comes through those infinity divinity relationships, when it touches the mind, whatever quality is there is massively enhanced, good or bad. When it touches the astral body, any quality that is there, good or bad, is enhanced. Same with the physical, the vital. So we have to develop the quality. That is why a system of initiation can be very important. So we actually give ourselves the opportunity to progress in a way that is somewhat functional and in a way step by step, right? It doesn't have to be slow. It doesn't have to be 30 years, 40 years to go through this. But very often if we try to bite off more than we can chew, it's too much. And we end up suffering the consequences when we do that. So the passive mindfulness is very useful. It allows us to find peace and evolution and growth regardless of the environment. The active mindfulness is when we bring this peace, this equanimity, this freedom into action, into our daily expression. So our own relationship with and through infinity, as we develop our own relationship to the environment, to all the layers of the vibrational scale that we're working with, that we perceive on a day by day and moment by moment basis, our ability to actually work with this stuff comes through the active mindfulness, the active expression of equanimity, the active expression of freedom, the active expression of sovereignty. If we are acting under the confines of our relationship to external perspectives, then the ability to touch into a authentic expression of our current relationship with the path, with where we're at, that will always be obfuscated. It will always be confused. How can it not be? So this allows us to bring the sincerity of our current layer of development forward. Okay? And this is the aspect of sovereignty that plays through the active mindfulness. So we could say passive sovereignty and active sovereignty. And we need to work both of these just as we work passive mindfulness and active mindfulness. Okay, now continuing with this exploration, we'll find that our fear, because we're working from a place of deep equanimity, and through that equanimity we unlock the Akashic paradox, and through the Akashic paradox we start to unwind a relationship with infinity, and through that infinity, boom, we start to spiral in through the divinity aspect of things. Because we are working from those perspectives, we're free from the, say, fear of the environment, the fear of other people's thoughts, the fear of other people's emotions, the fear of other people's actions. The motivation becomes much more pure, we could say. And so the active expression of that initial mindful exploration, and through that, the whole freedom scale and the prayer scale, the infinity through divinity scale, all of this stuff starts to unwind, and we can actually express honestly. We can actually express freely. And this is where many of us get tied up on the spiritual path when we're working this stuff. We get stuck because there's a part of the identity that has latched on to the finger pointing at the moon, the finger of the teacher pointing at the moon. If we have a good teacher, we might still latch on to the finger, the exercises, the particular thoughts and views, the system itself. So of course it's great to have a good system, right? It opens up many doors and possibilities when you've accessed numbers of different good systems. But we have to keep moving through that. We need to find the authentic connection to the spiritual process that we're working through. Students who come to me very often have done trainings, have trained for decades, sometimes longer than I've been alive in different systems, and have very good skill in particular paradigms. But very often when they come to me, it is that there's some aspect of how to move beyond the system, how to move beyond the teachings, how to move beyond the views, how to move beyond the exercises, beyond these paradigms that have been essentially like thrown at them, that they've been locked in. So you have to be very, very careful when you are training with anybody. What boxes do you allow yourself to be placed in? What parameters do you allow a teacher to impose on you? And these are very, very important to note, because in order to sustain our sense of being good at whatever our stuff is, or in order to sustain our self-image of however that facilitates itself in the individual, we will see and only see the positives of an approach, right? Because if that's the approach we're taking, why would we not take the best approach, right? Of course, this is the best one. It's the one that I do, right? This is very common. And then the rationalizing mind jumps in and starts concocting all kinds of tales that make a hell of a lot of logical sense about why that is. And on and on and on we go. The instinctual mind preserving the identity and limiting the intuition from actually functioning. So the active mindfulness, when this starts to come about, you find that you tend to be able to express much more sincerely, much more honestly. And often you aren't scared of stimulating negative emotions. You're also not scared of stimulating positive emotions. And you can express freely. Now, where we run into a pitfall here is that if the goodwill hasn't been developed, if the sovereignty to your own impulses, your own beliefs, your own past and history, etc., hasn't been taken care of, if your own black and white mirror hasn't been cultivated mentally, astrally, physically, and released upon, that's super important. You're not just building an identity, you are releasing upon an identity, so that there's a continuum of evolution. This has to be in place. Once this is in place, then you are far more likely, if you're on the other side of the Akashic bridge, if you're working from the other side of the Akashic paradox, that the actual sincerity is what's coming through. Very often you get people who claim to be that wrathful deity, if you're working from a Tibetan standpoint, or claim to be working from the perspective of the chaos-inducing, perfectly honest individual. And this is almost always a means of expressing their shadow and excusing that through saying, oh, like I am I'm channeling the universe, etc. This isn't me. I speak the truth, whatever. Do you? Are you? If you are hurting people, are you? There's a big difference between having the best for someone in mind and speaking honestly, and just using that as an excuse to express your own shadow, to express your own dominion, to cause pain to other people. So this is very, very common, right? And as soon as you're doing that, you are imposing limitations on that person's subconscious. You're creating collapse and contraction, right? And so if you're working from that active mindfulness, right, you're aware of this continuum of infinity and surrender, right? And you are much more, hopefully, as you evolve, you become much more than aware of it. You start acting from that place of infinity. You start acting from that Akashic paradigm. And as a result, as the Spirit works through that, as the light of the Spirit works through, then we have a much different paradigm that unfolds in interaction, right? And in pursuit and in forward movement, which is one that is free, that is sovereign, yet also working through the union of our relationship with the light of the Spirit, because we are out of the way, okay? And this is a really important thing to contemplate and meditate on. And if you don't know, like if you're unaware, you're probably, it's better to assume that you're acting from more of a negative space than to assume that you're acting from a positive space. As the identity falls away, the energy stops touching you, right? Instead of pressurizing your mind so that that facilitates out through the mental plane, or your astral body that will facilitate out through the astral plane, or your vital and physical bodies that facilitate and express out through those planes, it passes through you. And more, it stops touching you altogether. This is where one finds themselves to be, we might say, full of light, but not pressurized by light. A conduit, yet not pressurized. This is a very peculiar thing that we will talk about, being a conduit for energy, yet then claim that the proof of that is that we feel all this energy trapped in the body, that we feel this fullness and pressurization in the body, or in the astral body, in the mental body. And this is there, and this energy will come through and it will pressurize those areas and strengthen them in different ways. You end up spiritualizing the mental body, spiritualizing the astral body, spiritualizing the physical body, spiritualizing all the layers within each of those, on and on it goes. And through that, we also work back from the space of infinity and Akasha. So you have these interesting paradigms that occur with this strengthening and pressurization, which is essentially allowing us to recognize where we are in contrast to the conductive flow of that energy. It's important, and it really helps us move forward. So, passive mindfulness in the beginning allows us to become free from the imposition of the environment upon us. And active mindfulness allows us to act with freedom forward, moving through from a place that is hopefully not imposing on the environment, yet at the same time 100% sincere and authentic. And as a result of this, because it's from both of these, both the passive and active are coming from a place of infinity, from the Akashic paradox, and that's light to the spirits working through, because that is the place from which action is occurring. There is a type of freedom that goes along with that is transferred across and transferred through, because the recognition, because we're acting from non-imposition, right? because we're acting from freedom, from sovereignty. That sovereignty passes. If we are acting from a place of constraint, contraction, fear, that is what will transfer. And that is where people will take on a whole bunch of contractions in their subconscious and allow for these boxes to be placed around the subconscious and all the potentials that we can carry through. So anyway, that is a little bit on passive and active mindfulness and some of the through flows up and down the vibrational scale. If you're interested in in training, please check out the website. We have a free 18-hour lecture series that I consolidated from the podcast here on Franz Barden's Initiation into Hermetics, so you can use that as a study aid for that book. There is also the online training courses in Hermetic Alchemy, Qi Gong meditation, in Tai Chi, and of course the Zenden, which is a Q&A video reference library, and there's also other auxiliary course materials that pop up there. Please stay tuned for retreat and webinar updates as well as those become available. All right, thanks for your time. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.